And right, okay. Yeah, we're live, so I'll just wait for it to. So I'll just wait for it to. There we go. Beautiful faces. Right. I'm just gonna copy it out. Right. Was that yours or me?
That was me. I'll turn my volume off my phone now. Let me share it.
Do. All right. Hello, Alison and Marty. Hello, Jake Purcell. Welcome to the first live stream of In Full Swing. I was about to say all Leeds then, but we're just sharing it out, guys. So just so everyone can see, and then we'll get going. Smithers, hello. Smithers, what a name. Retweet. How are you doing anyway, Paul? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. I'm just consistently nervous now, but I'm going to try because I'm on the In Full Swing, I'm going to try be completely neutral. Liam Lundlam coming in there with my thoughts exactly. Hope Brentford lose tonight. Guys, there is 12 of you watching so far, which is great. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, that would be absolutely excellent. Sharing it with your friends is the first endorsement, really, of one of our live podcasts. I've had a haircut for the occasion, Paul. How would you rate this? How would you rate this out of 10?
It's good up top.
Good up top, weak on the sides, a bit like West Brom.
I'll compare it to mine, and mine's a shambles. So,
right, mate. Let's get into this. So if any of you don't know, Paul Harrison, he's a mate on my course, massive Brentford fan, knows his stuff on football, and he does write stuff for, is it the Beesotted channel, Paul?
Yeah, Beesotted, yeah. Beesotted Brentford is like the biggest Brentford fans network.
Yeah, so Paul writes stuff for those guys pretty frequently. But yeah, I mean, let's get into it, mate. Originally, let's get a bit of background on it. We're going to be talking everything relegation, everything promotion today. So just, I guess, the blueprint, really. Why on earth are you a Brentford fan?
Yeah, I know. It's quite a strange season. It's a small club, you might say, compared to your Leeds. So for me, I was born near Brentford. I moved away when I was really young. But my dad's a Man United fan. He's from Manchester, but I never really felt that connection to Man United. I always wanted to be a bit of an underdog, support those kind of teams. And yeah, so I looked at my roots. I looked where I came from. I looked at what football teams were near me, and I started following the Bees about, I'd say, 7 or 8 years ago now. When we were just sort of near the top end of League One. Had a few nightmare moments in the first season with the Bees. I was following them, nearly going up on the last day, and then losing to Doncaster because we missed a penalty and they went down the other end and scored and went promoted. Lost to Yeovil in the playoff final. But all this time, I just thought, this is just such a great club. I love the stadium. I just love the energy and like what it meant to the fans, and it felt like a proper football club that it was raw. That's what I'd say. And I thought, well, I want to be a part of that. So that's really my background and my reasons for supporting the Bees. And because I live in Dorset, I don't really get to a lot of the home games. I go when I can, and it's seeing Griffin Park in its final season this year it's just a different atmosphere this season. It's the next level, and I'm going to be so sad when we leave there. So sad.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously it's a huge thing right now, and the new stadium looks brilliant. And do you think sort of Brentford will lose that sort of little bit of an advantage they have because they've been notoriously superb at Griffin Park for a number of years now?
Yeah, I think you see with teams moving into stadiums, there's always that little lull at the start, isn't there? I mean, you cast your mind back to like Arsenal, the Emirates, West Ham, teams like that, and it will take a while to adapt, I'm sure. But I think the way that the club has come on and progressed, it's a necessary move, and it's something we have to do. I think we will adapt eventually, but it depends on where the club is next season. I think if we're in the Prem, it will be very hard, I think, to adapt straight away. I think if we're in the Championship, I think it all depends on the league, really, doesn't it? But yeah, I think ultimately the club's gonna benefit from the move, definitely, both on and off the pitch.
And do you think sort of right now there's been so many years, and obviously we're going to focus on Brentford a bit, just literally because obviously you're here, but do you think it's sort of now geared up because this season we're going to get into it a little bit, but you've had, some cracking transfers like we all know Brentford have. The strategies are unbelievable of how you recruit players. I mean, I was sat here with my mate the other day and we're reeling off names, and you just think of even your own team and Stuart Dallas, who's pivotal for us. Our player of the season comes in from Brentford. We signed him for Brentford. The likes of, I remember when Birmingham had that surge years ago and they brought in Jota, Harley Dean, players like that. And even 4 or 5 years ago, just Brentford's continuous transfer policy it's just been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the one of the key things that has just helped us progress as a club. It's this transfer policy, it's the recruitment, it's the, we don't know as fans what's really going on the inside with the transfer policy. It's all statistical led. It's all, that's what it's to do with it. It's smart transfers, basically. And we pick up players from, French second division, from Denmark, from, leagues across Europe, undervalued, underappreciated players. And they come in and we just grow them and sell them on for a profit. And you look at some of the players who've come through the door, like Stuart Dallas that you've mentioned, but guys like John Egan at Sheffield United, he's massive for them this season. Tarkowski at Burnley, was big for us, and we sold him on. Andre Gray, I know maybe not doing so well this year. We've had some real talents who've come through that transfer policy in recent years, and it just, because of the profits we turn over, it allows us to invest better and in more undervalued players every time we go on. And it means that you look at some of the guys we brought in this season. We had a massive splurge of cash over the summer window. We bought like 7 new signings in. We spent the most in the league, but it's because we'd raised so much money from the players we'd already sold. And I think it will just continue to. It fuels itself. It will continue to fuel itself. You look at the guys who are being linked with moves away now, Ben Rama and Watkins, and although I'm praying that they don't go, I feel like if they do, I trust the club so well to recruit the right replacements and us to, keep progressing forwards. And it's such a brilliant position to be in as a fan, to know that you can trust your board to make those signings right and make the right recruitment decisions. Yeah, it's just great to see all those players coming through, really.
Yeah, mate, it's been and obviously we'll get onto this in a bit. And I've been looking forward to this because, it's a great position both clubs are in. For obviously I'm trying to be neutral on this channel. So it's not just Leeds, it's not just Brentford. You've still got Forest in and around. You've still got obviously West Bromwich Albion, who the quality of those teams, there's certain players that they've got. And I just want sort of we'll talk about this weekend that's just been first of all. What happened at the weekend in terms of Brentford's fixture and what, I mean, you must see a lot of positives in the fact that Wigan came down there. They've got so many good results recently, top of the form table. And, you've just got that sort of little genius, haven't you, who just seems to absolutely do bits in this division.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those games, we were looking at it, we're coming in with such good form after lockdown. And we're thinking, Wigan on paper, lower down in the league, but they had such good form. They were the form team after us, perhaps. But obviously with this administration thing they're going through, maybe we were thinking it might have rocked them, but maybe it might have fired them up as well. So I think we were all just a little bit unsure as what would happen. But as soon as the first whistle went, you could just see we were on top of them the whole 90 minutes, just dominated the game, 60-odd% possession, and they didn't have a chance really. And I think what we're seeing, particularly this towards the end of the season, we haven't conceded in our last 4 games, and was actually our last 5. But we're sort of, it's the defensive performances that are much better this season. In the past, we've conceded sloppy goals and it's let us down. We haven't been able to get where we want to because of that. But we've really tightened up at the back, and the whole defensive performance of the team is second to none, really. And that is what's making the difference. And then when you've got players like Ben Rama going forwards who can just turn it on and score a hat-trick, his second goal was ridiculous. I don't know if you saw it. He gets it out on the edge of the box, and it's just a cross, but I don't know whether he spotted the keeper off his line or something, but he loops it in from about 20 yards out, really tight angle, and the caliber of players we've got now to be competing in these positions. It's not surprising because of the way they play, and I feel like now we look forward to these next 5 games, and honestly, I have to say this, I don't see us losing any of them, because I just think unless we slip up, on paper we are good enough to win all those games.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, mate. I mean, that's a massive talking point right now. Are Brentford gonna lose a game? Because I mean, 10. I mean, I guess it's a little bit different from drawing a game and all this sort of stuff. But actually winning 10 on the bounce, I mean, that would be. I mean, that would be record breaking. That would be pretty incredible. But what's happened post lockdown with Brentford? Do you think it's the fact that maybe there aren't crowds there, that are sort of Brentford are just able to sort of play the game?
Yeah, I think it could be that. I think you look at our, again, Griffin Park. We're a small team relatively in terms of crowds, and yeah, Griffin Park is a fortress. But I feel like the way that we've got to where we are in the league isn't based necessarily on relying on fans or being able to grind out results. And actually, with lockdown, with this break, it's kind of showing up who's more reliant on their fans, and it's kind of highlighting the more technical teams. And we are a technical team. There's no doubt about that. And I think because of that, that's why we're getting these results. Because when it comes to, imagine like a training match, the more technical team usually is going to win. And I think that's why we're winning more games, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good point, and I think it sort of leads us on to, we're talking about the sort of team of the season earlier on, and who you think should be in there. From a West Bromwich Albion perspective, they're that team who are in and around where we are, really, where Leeds and Brentford are. We'll get onto the sort of the team of the season, who you'd put in there and who you wouldn't put there in a bit. I know there's been a lot of controversy at the minute. Some people think that Romain Sawyer should be in there ahead of the likes of, Calvin Phillips, ahead of the likes of Jake Livermore, who's had a good season. I know that's caused controversy. But what do you think of when you look at West Brom? I mean, obviously, their individual quality. I mean, you reel off names like Dean Garner, Pereira, who I think Pereira's arguably one of the signings of the season. He's an absolutely wonderful player. You've got Charlie Austin, Robinson coming off the bench, still Hal Robson, Conor. And it doesn't seem that they've been as consistent as maybe a Leeds or a Brentford, but they've surely still got that individual quality to turn a game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I think when you look at that roster, that player list, it's Premier League experience, it's quality going forward. In those wide positions, they've got Pereira, Dean Garner, Callum Robinson on loan from Sheffield United. There was another one, Krasicki, who scored against Hull the other day. I forgot he was even playing for them. Yeah. They've just got so many of those players, and they've got real squad depth. But maybe I feel like they feel the pressure maybe because they have those players, and they've been there before. But I don't know whether it works both ways, and they might be. I honestly think they could slip up, but maybe I'm just saying that because that's what I want to hear as a Brentford fan. But I think the individual quality is there throughout that team, and we're more relying on the team to slip up because we know those players on their day can put in a 10 out of 10 performance and are too good for this league.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's been the. It's getting to a point now where it's like they've sort of turned around a little bit, beat Wednesday, beat Hull, and I predicted that. I thought they'd get a sneaky one against Wednesday. Looks like it was pretty comfortable, but you look at the game against Hull. I had a little bit of a watch of West Brom's game against Hull, end to end, shots from both teams. Hull managing to score twice. Do you put that down to the fact that they're fighting for their lives, or do you put that down to something else?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think Hull obviously really do need the points, and as they say in the Championship, any team can win any game. But I think with West Brom, there's perhaps in those kind of games where they have got to go for it now, they are probably feeling the pressure, and they think we need to really try and make the most of what we've got going forward. And when we played West Brom, we very recently, it was 1-0 win. Watkins scored within the first 20 minutes, and then we kind of just decided to manage the game. It was quite comfortable in the end. But I think you have to look at each game separately. And with that game against Hull, they were going for it, and Hull perhaps maybe got a couple of lucky goals. But I still think there's that fragility in the West Brom team, and I feel like they are beatable.
Yeah, and it's a huge week. We're talking about predicted fixtures for all teams. I mean, it seems like a lot of the West Brom, the Brentford, and the Leeds fans were all trying to find little advantages of where each team's going to slip up. But you just can't do that with the Championship, can you? And I think that's why at this moment in time, it's so impressive what Brentford are doing. A lot of people are turning around and saying, Leeds bottled it, all this sort of stuff. But you look at Leeds. I mean, I think we've won 7 games out of 8, or so. I think it might be 6 out of 8. But that's not a bad run either. And I think it is just pivotal that teams are getting that consistency now, and maybe that's what is happening with West Brom now. They've managed to pick up 2. They've got an absolutely huge game tomorrow night away at Derby County. I mean, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think it's at home, actually, isn't it? I'm not too sure. But yeah, I think personally, I think we need Derby to get a result there. I think Derby, you look at them as one of the form teams with Rooney coming in. It's just the whole mood of the place is uplifted. They look like the kind of team you can imagine. He's got that winning mentality, and he's instilling it and imprinting it across that whole team. And I think we as Brentford fans need Derby to pick up points. We're relying on it, because if West Brom,
just to interject there, Paul, with regards to that, a lot of West Brom fans and Leeds fans have been talking about the fact that if it's the end of this week again and Leeds win, maybe get 4 points out of 6, I don't know, or 6 out of 6. West Brom managed to get maybe 4-6 points out of 6. Is that a time where Brentford are thinking, right, we need a slip up here, big time?
I think we're in that position already, to be honest. I think, I still will stand by and believe that we could win all 5 of our games. But West Brom do have to drop points. There's no doubt about it. There's a 5-point gap. It's not just one poor result, it's 2. And I think Derby, being in form with Rooney, I feel like they've got the best opportunity of doing that. And if they can take points off West Brom this weekend, that sort of changes the mood a bit. I feel like West Brom will start to be a little bit more nervous. I feel like if West Brom do win this weekend, then maybe the confidence will be there. They'll start to believe a little bit more. I think a lot of it is mentality, to be honest, at the moment with this run-in. I think lockdown, it's unprecedented scenario. It's changed the way that teams are prepared for this run-in. And I think, if West Brom can win this weekend, they'll genuinely believe that they'll go up in the top 2. I think if they don't, then we're sort of, we close the gap.
What are your thoughts on each team's sort of running?
I think if we're looking at the top 3, I'd say we've got quite a nice run in. Derby away at the weekend is again a game where we could drop points, but I will say that I think we have to win it. That's a massive game. I think I'm looking at Leeds as a team who probably got enough to pull away. I think Swansea away at the weekend, am I right? That could be a tricky one. Swansea, play good football. Maybe that plays into your hands a bit. I think West Brom, their next two games are crucial, really. And if they drop points in the next two, I think, we're right on their heels. We've got the better goal difference as well. But yeah, I think it all really, for me, hinges on how West Brom do tonight or against Derby.
Yeah, huge, absolutely huge. We've got a comment in here from Elliot Whitehead. Conor, on obviously Paul, what do you think of the Janssen and Pinnock partnership? So what difference, obviously as neutrals here, we're just talking about a partnership in itself. From a sort of personal point of view, I'm sort of turning around and thinking they are an absolute. I don't think he could have had this partnership with Liam Cooper. Liam Cooper. I'm talking about Janssen, obviously, a left-sided centre back. But whether or not that means Ethan Pinnock is a better defender, I personally think Ethan Pinnock, from a neutral point of view, is a better defender than Liam Cooper. So maybe that is the impact that Janssen needed. I don't know whether or not his quality's just gone through the roof, but he does seem a different player at Brentford.
Yeah. I think what I'd say on that is that, Janssen gets the best out of Pinnock. Pinnock gets the best out of Janssen. I think they work so well as a partnership, more than perhaps they work with someone else. I think Pinnock, he's a monster of a defender. Nothing gets past him. One-on-one battles with strikers, he's perfect. You wouldn't want a different centre-back in this division. With Janssen, he's the organiser. He's the guy who kind of holds that defence together, marshals it a bit more. And we've seen that earlier in the season when he's been out injured, particularly in February, where we had a little blip in our results. And that was because Janssen was on the sidelines. And Pinnock needed that organiser alongside him. I'm not saying Pinnock's reliant on him, but I think it makes him look like a much better defender. And I think Janssen's probably getting the best out of the environment as well, where he's kind of, he's in charge of that defence. And I think it's as well, it's not just those two with us. It's that whole back five, back six even. It's the way that they're so in sync with each other, and their shape is always just spot on. And they just marshal these attackers out of the game at the moment. That's what we're seeing anyway. I mean, in the last couple of games, we've limited teams to their expected goals have been like, West Brom was 0.4, Reading 0.2, Wigan 0.1. They're just not getting any chances because of the way, just how organised that partnership and the whole back five is.
Do you think, obviously, we'll take a swift move on now, because I want to touch on the relegation battle as well, because obviously I think that's a key thing which a lot of people are interested in. What are your thoughts on it at the minute? Obviously, we've had sort of Wigan pull out, really. Obviously, the defeat you handed them at the weekend was the first in a long time, and I think now they're sort of out of it, really. You're sort of looking at, for me, Luton, Barnsley, Borough, and I think Stoke. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the sort of run-in, and who do you think's got the quality to get out, really?
Yeah, I think the relegation battle is actually really interesting because of these potential points deductions that Wigan and Sheffield Wednesday as well might face. Now, the Wigan one, it's going to be a 12-point deduction if they're not already relegated, which it looks like it's going to be. So I think they've got a lot to play for still, and they could still be drawn into it. In terms of actually who will finish in those bottom three spaces, I think Barnsley are going to come last, just because if you look at their run-in, they've got to play Wigan, who's still fighting for their lives, still playing well. They've got to play Leeds. They've got to play Forest. They've got to play Brentford. They're games that I just don't see them getting anything out of. I think Luton as well. I'm just not a fan of Luton. I think they can turn it on in some games. They can be, they're just a bit too inconsistent though. And defensively, I mean, I watched the game when we beat them 7-0 at Griffin Park, and they were just They just did. It just didn't look like they know what they were doing out there. They weren't really closing our players. They were just letting us play. And perhaps now with Nathan Jones returning to manage them, maybe they can recapture a bit of the form from last season, which got promoted. But I think they'll probably finish in those spaces. As for the third one, I would say Hull again. I think just losing Bowen and Grosicki, the squad's just not good enough really to survive. It looks like a League One squad to me, and I think when you compare them with like the heavyweights of Stoke and Huddersfield, who have just Huddersfield just come down from the Prem, they've still got Prem caliber players in those squads, and although maybe they are bigger teams, I just don't think I think they're too good, and I think they'll survive.
Yeah, it's interesting with Stoke. Obviously, it's our next game, and it's a really interesting sort of game, I think, with Stoke, because they've got the quality. They've got Tyrese Campbell, James McLean. I figured out the other day that they've still got James Chester at the back. And that, I mean, Jack Butland, who's been making mistake after mistake, but still the quality's there. Maybe a lot of big egos at Stoke, and that could be a potential for them to flop, really. Yeah,
I think with Michael O'Neill in charge, I think he's maybe turned that around. I think you saw when he came in, they were a shambles, they were falling apart, but I feel like they've got that edge. They've got that edge now that it's a bit restored. And on the weekend they beat Barnsley 4-0, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's that they didn't have much of the ball in that game, but they knew how to beat Barnsley. And I know Barnsley are a team that I'm tipping to go down, but I just think Stoke, they've distanced themselves a little bit now, and I think the confidence will be there, and they've got the quality just to pull away, really. I think the interesting thing, though, as I'll come back to, is that Wigan and Sheffield Wednesday, if they get these points deductions, it could really throw them right into the mix.
And
I think, Derby too, but I think they're probably a little bit clear. But I think you have to wait until you hear what the decisions are on those before I can really call who's going to go down. But I would say if you would put a gun to my head, say three names, it would be Barnsley, Luton, and then probably Wigan if there's a points deduction. But if not, then Hull, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hull are one of the worst teams I've seen in the Championship. They really are diabolical. Interestingly, you touched on it there, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. So I presume teams do this against Brentford, but it seems like they do it to a lesser effect. If you are defending as a low block, and I've noticed West Brom struggle against this as well, but Brentford recently seem to be able to get through it, and teams do defend against you. They sit back, they'll wait and wait and wait for Brentford to make a mistake. What's the difference between Brentford able to sort of maybe like knock 7 past Luton at home, but when Luton come to Leeds, it is a defensive, in their terms, relative to Luton, it's probably a defensive masterclass. And, someone like Nathan Jones keeps being able to do that against Leeds. And I wouldn't say there's a massive gulf of quality between the two teams, because you look at where Leeds are, it's relative. You've probably got a better front three. But I just wonder, what is it about Brett? Is it the fact that that it is that front three that can just break down those lines?
I think to be fair, I mean, you go for Luton. When we went to Kenilworth Road in the reverse fixture, we got beat 2-1. So, there is inconsistencies again, isn't it? But I think what we're seeing this season particularly, and why we're able to break these kind of teams down, this has been our Achilles heel for a few seasons now. Why we're able to break these teams down, from my perspective, it's the way that we pass the ball around now. It's very one-touch, intricate little passes into pockets of space. And I feel like the players are so in sync with each other. They're just on this level above, and they can play into the little pockets of space that the low block perhaps doesn't pick up. I think there are a few teams we do struggle against when they play that. And the shining example for me is Nottingham Forest, who I think, very, very defensive-minded team. But as for why maybe Leeds are struggling to break it down, I'm not really sure, to be honest. But I think I wouldn't say there's any difference in how teams set up to play Leeds and to play Brentford. I think, ultimately we are the two best teams in the league, I think, in terms of footballing, on the pitch. So I would say I think we're able to pick holes because of the way that we're, the management and the tactics that we've brought in and the players, it's just this intricate passing. But I don't know, maybe it's just I think it's so inconsistent, isn't it? Like, you can have some games where you get that early goal and teams then have to come out a little bit at you. And perhaps when I reflect on that 7-0 win, that's what they had to do. As for you, when you were playing Luton the other week, that probably didn't happen, did it? And they were able to hold back and hold that shape for longer.
Well, I think the thing that from a neutral perspective, looking at maybe a West Brom, and we've just had a comment from a West Brom fan there, looking at West Brom and then looking at Leeds, it's taking those chances, and it just seems like the XG for Brentford is it's on point. Watkins near on scores every chance he gets. Same with Mbuemo. And obviously Ben Rama. I mean, you look at the weekend. I think he had 4 shots, 3 of them went in, and it's that clinical nature. And I think that's why a lot of people maybe are thinking, Brentford can't do this. But if they can solidify, if they're not letting goals in, you look at your game coming up against Derby. No Waghorn, no Tom Lawrence. I mean, it's really interesting playing someone like Derby, and we're going to get onto the playoffs in a little sec, but Derby are probably the form team at the minute going into that, the final hurdles. Cardiff doing extremely well as well. But I saw at the weekend, and I kind of want to touch on the Forest Derby game a little bit, and it brings me on nicely to it. I thought for the first time since he's come in, Wayne Rooney was marked out of the game. And they as soon as that happened, as soon as they've got someone following him around the pitch, and don't get me wrong, he is a world-class player, so I'm sure he'll be able to find space anywhere. But is that the key with such, all the top 3 playing Derby? Is that the key to beating them?
Well, I mean, you look at what Forest did, and they kind of neutralised it, didn't they? Derby were lucky to get that goal in the last minute, but that's what Forest do, and Forest are the kings of that. They get that early goal and they lock it down. Essentially, they're the kings of the 1-0 win in this league. I think for us, I think we need to stifle him as much as we can. Whether that's how we're going to set up, though, I'm not sure, because the way that Brentford go about games, we try and impose our style on the teams. We try and play our football, and if we've got to have someone always just sniffing around Wayne Rooney, I'm not sure whether that will affect us going forwards.
Yeah,
I think in terms of the fact that Waghorn is out, the fact Lawrence is out, that could be huge for us. But I think the Wayne Rooney effect has definitely been a thing, and I think you can see his quality. I still think he's a Premier League player, and if teams can effectively neutralise him, then you've got as good a chance. But at the same time, you only need a free kick. You only need one little moment of magic, and Rooney can, if you just let your guard down for a second, Rooney can damage teams still.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And so when we're looking at the playoff structure, then obviously we'll get onto the autos properly in a sec. But what are your thoughts? I mean, I initially said Millwall were going to get in there, and we were talking earlier on about the crowds affecting football. And I think Millwall have been the absolute prime example of that, because I think that crowd they have, especially at the Den, they had some favourable fixtures coming into this. They're on some really good form. And they sort of, losing to Derby at home, then, I think they lost another game as well, just on the road. And it has got to a point with Millwall where you're sort of thinking maybe the 5-point gap is too much. I mean, that's exactly an example of what you were saying, Paul, about maybe the technical team's been better away from the fans. What do you think the chances in the playoffs? Who do you think is going to get in there, and why do you think that?
I've done a little one of those prediction leagues, and I've got Cardiff sneaking in there. In fact, actually, I think they're going to get ahead of Fulham, going to fifth. And I think the reason I'm picking Cardiff, yeah, they've got a couple of tough fixtures coming up, and I think if they can get points in those games against, I think it's West Brom. I've written it down here. If they get points against West Brom, no, it's not West Brom, Fulham and Blackburn, they're quite tough fixtures. But if they can do that, the confidence lifts. And I think as well, with Neil Harris taking over there, you saw what he did with Millwall earlier on in the season. The way they play, it's simple. You know what you're going to get, but it's still quite hard to beat. And if there are teams who are going to be, everyone's, a lot of teams in this league have got a lot to play for. And Cardiff's the kind of team you don't want to face when they're going to, outmuscle you, play a bit of long ball up to Glatzel up front. And I just think they're quite a disruptive team in the way that I don't feel Derby are going to get in, is because we've seen what Forest have shown is that you can effectively neutralise Rooney. And I think Derby have got tough games now, really tough games against teams who've got a lot to play for. Yeah, I'm sure they'll pick up some points here, there, and everywhere, but we'll have to see. Like in the next, I think next 1 or 2 games across the league will give a really, really good indication as to who's going to get it. I would say Cardiff.
Cardiff, yeah, I think I'd agree with you, mate. I think they've just got that. They've got that little advantage now as well, haven't they? They've got a nice little cushion over Derby, and I think they're just hard to beat. Exactly like you say, it's sort of that Neil Warnock structure. But now he's coming. They've got Warnock 2.0, really, haven't they? Neil Harris. I mean, he sort of plays the exact same way. We went down there. There was the long throws. There was the low block defending really efficiently. And, if teams miss the chances down there, they'll only probably get 1 or 2 down there, especially. And Cardiff have got they play. What I've always thought about Cardiff is they play to their strengths so well, and they almost make other teams play the Cardiff way. I mean, I remember watching the Brentford game down there. You went 2-0 up, and so at the end of the game, you were extremely lucky to come out of there with anything, because it was just no disrespect to Derby, but it was the aerial assault, it was set pieces, and Brentford were hanging on. And obviously, you saw Leeds United go down there, and it was the same. It was a similar vein. We started playing their way towards the end, and if they can effectively do that against any other team that they're coming up against, they're gonna win that side of it, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that, and I think they're going to be up against teams who are needing to try and play. They're not looking for draws. They're going to be up against teams like Blackburn, who have got an outside shot at the playoffs. Teams like Fulham, who need all the points they can get. Teams who are going to be going for it. And I think I just get that feeling that if Cardiff pick up those points in the next week, they're going to pull clear of Derby and get into the playoffs.
And then obviously we've got the playoff structure. I would obviously say Cardiff are in there. Then are you still going with the same 4 teams in that playoff structure? Obviously, we don't know who. Yeah. I presume you'd pick Brentford, obviously, to go up top 2.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get onto this now, aren't we? I think as a Brentford fan, I could not live with myself if I don't say we're going to go up top 2. I think we will need to probably win at least 4. Maybe all 5 of our last 5 games. I don't see why we can't do that. I think West Brom are just going to miss out on maybe goal difference to us. It'll be really tight. And then probably for the other 3, I'd say Forest, Cardiff, and then maybe Fulham 6th. But again, you just can't predict it, can you? It's this league. It's
what it kills you doing, doesn't it? Predicting.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so good to watch. It's I could say Fulham aren't going to pick up points in the next few games, but they might win all 3, and then all of a sudden they could be knocking on the door of the top 2. It's really hard to tell, but my gut instinct is it'll be West Brom 3rd, Forest 4th, Cardiff 5th, Fulham 6th. But yeah, I mean, who knows? What about you? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I do you know what, mate? I'd go with the exact same. I'd probably switch Fulham and Cardiff around, but I still think we go into the playoff structure, and obviously you got the 4 teams there. I still think you're going to make it into the top 2. Sorry, West Brom fans, if you are watching live or after the fact. And do you think it's going to be a case of? I mean, I think this playoff structure is going to be absolutely superb this year. You know, you're going to get Fulham getting Mitrovic back from suspension. Obviously, he might have a little bit of a rest out, then get back into the games pretty nicely. You've got Forest, who they really are on a bit of an assault at the minute. I know, obviously, Derby got the draw at the weekend, but you watch that game, Forest missed some massive, massive chances. For me, they were by far the better team. There was a gulf between them both. And obviously, West Bromwich Albion, if they do get in there, then, you know, they've got that individual quality. And obviously, Cardiff, that we were just speaking about. I mean, you play to Cardiff, as I think Joe Rawls said, can beat absolutely anybody on the day.
Yeah, I think you have to look at West Brom, and I think they're sort of the starting point here. And if they're not going to go up top two, does that really rattle the players' belief? You know, to say that they were so far in the lead, you know, a few months ago, and now they suddenly pull themselves into the playoffs. It's a bit like Leeds last season. You know, does it really get into their players' heads? And you know, particularly if they're going to go up against a team like Forest or Cardiff in the semi-finals. It all depends, really, you know, where they fall in that order. But I still think West Brom on their day are good enough to beat those three teams, and I'd tip them to go up. It's just they'll make a meal of it, I feel, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know I definitely know what you're saying, and there's a lot of quality in that four, and as a Leeds fan, you know, I've said neutral about 19 times so far, but I am trying to be neutral. But looking at that objectively, I would not want to be in those playoffs, just because there's a lot of teams there who I think stylistically are a bad match for Leeds. They're not a good match for us. And yeah, I mean, how would you feel because let's be right, mate. I mean, it's less likely for Leeds because obviously we're sort of 6 points clear of Brentford. But right now, as we speak, Brentford are in the playoffs. So how would you feel going into that process? Because as we've just spoken about, a lot of good teams.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It rattles your confidence a little bit. Just because you're thinking about the playoffs, and you just got to win these games, because playoffs are such a lottery. I feel there's such a lottery, and we haven't got a good record in the playoffs in years gone by. I'd feel like on our day we are the best team out of those teams remaining. Let's say West Brom go up automatically. We've got Forest, Fulham, and Cardiff. I think on our day we are a better team than all of those. We've taken 4 points off Cardiff this season. We've done double over Fulham. I feel comfortable playing Fulham in the semis. It's just, it's Nottingham Forest. They're just a little bit awkward, aren't they? Just a bit of a bogey team, and it's the way they set up. And under Lamucci this season, they've, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily the style has got worse. I think it's, you know, under Martin O'Neill last year, they were playing the exact same way, but they're just so much more effective now with the players they've got, you know, and they can shut the door on you. And
I think as well, Paul, they've got quality and depth. You know, we saw Da Costa playing at the weekend instead of Amiobi, and you know he had a really good game. And Lewis Grabban, they've just got that absolute lethal striker up front. Obviously, you know, and they've just got quality everywhere. But exactly like you said, that they just know how to shut teams down, and I think maybe that is going to be the difference. I think Forest will definitely be definitely in with a strong shout of getting that promotion spot. Yeah,
I'd agree. I think a couple of players who I really like who they've got, Joe Lolly, I think, is a really good player, and you know he's got a long shot on him, and that's he did it when they came down to Griffin Park. He got a lucky long shot, deflected goal, but he's got that little bit of quality on the ball. You know, the odd player who's got it, and same with Thiago Silva as well. Not the PSG defender, but the Irish midfielder. And he scored a free kick the other against Reading, I think, last week. And it was just they have those little moments where they can just nick a goal, you know, just a bit of quality, and the rest of the game they'll just stifle you. And that's why I'd say I think on their day Forest are very dangerous, and you have to find a way to play into their weaknesses. But what are their weaknesses? I'm not so sure. You know, maybe it's you have to kind of play them at their own game, maybe, and try and, you know, get a rise out of some of their players. It's I don't know. I'm a little bit scared of Nottingham Forest, and I know on our day we have much more quality than them, to be honest. But I just think in terms of getting a result against them, I would be very nervous. And if that was a playoff final, Brentford v Forest, I would be literally biting my nails all morning, all evening. I don't know. I'd be terrified.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you. And I think even when you look at the different oppositions in that game, you look at West Brom, let's say if West Brom were to, I mean, we're going to involve Leeds in this. We're going to have to involve Leeds in this because there is still a potential. People watching this might not like it, but there is still a potential. Leeds might not make it. There's nothing finalised right yet. So in that playoff picture, if you had Leeds or let's say a West Bromwich Albion, I think it is one of those where they're all three of us are very open and expansive teams, yet Nottingham Forest, they're so good on the counter-attack, but defensively with the likes of Sam Bassau, they're a different team with him. I think he's an unbelievable player, and he's 31 years of age, and he seemingly just stifles. Ryan Yates in there as well. And like you said, Paul, I think there's been a massive addition with Forest's side, with Bryce Samba in there. I mean, what an incredible signing he's been. Yeah, massive signing for them.
I mean, we're getting on to team of the season in a bit, but for me, he's the standout keeper in this league. He's like a brick wall. He saves everything, and they've had some players in that position in the past, like Pantilimon from the ex-Man City keeper. Guys who've just had a little bit of an error in them, a bit of a mistake. It feels like the fans feel like they've finally got the keeper that they deserve and they need. And you can just see what a boost it's been for them. I think there's just a few little additions everywhere in that team, and they are a team. They're a nasty team, but they are a team, and they're as I keep saying, the teams who play like teams are the ones who are all really united and really on song and in sync. They're the ones who have probably got the mentality to do well in the playoffs, and that's why I'd say Forest are more dangerous in the playoffs than Fulham. Perhaps more dangerous than Cardiff, and would probably, if we get dragged in there, they'll be our biggest threat.
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree with you. From I think even West Brom fans. I mean, if you are a West Brom fan, stick your comments in the section below. Who would be the worst team to face in the playoffs? I mean, obviously none of us want to think like that, but it is still unfortunately a realistic outcome. And with regards to obviously the top two, Paul, I mean, we've spoken about this at length now with regards to, I think Leeds will get in there. You think Brentford will get in there. Hopefully we'll both get in there. You're obviously playing Brentford tonight, Charlton tonight. Huge game. What are your thoughts on how that'll go? And obviously you're very confident with regards to sort of winning most games. As Joe's just said here, can Agent Bowyer get a result against Brentford? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite strange actually, because our 4 games after lockdown, we played Fulham in the first one, and that's always a cagey game. West London derby, we're always fired up for it, but they're quite a good team. So, we were maybe, going in expecting a draw or something. West Brom again, team at the top of the league. So weren't, expecting a win. Reading away, we thought that's the kind of game where we'd normally drop points, particularly after, beating Fulham and West Brom. It would be very classic Brentford to drop points at Reading. And then Wigan, very informed team. Now we've got Charlton at home. It looks like a winnable fixture. And as I say, this league, it throws up surprises. I think we'll win. I think we'll stifle them. I think we'll play them off the park. I think we'll get, we've been getting early goals in every game, apart from the Fulham one. And if we get that early goal sort of around 25 minutes, I think we'll have enough to pull through. But, Charlton are no easy team to beat. They're quite, they can defend well. We went to the Valley back in August, September time, and they beat us 1-0. So, there's no easy games in this league, are there?
No, and that's what, Owen Jacko's just said there. People saying Brentford will easily win tonight, but no game is easy. And I think, what I'm like, mate, and I even thought against Luton, I thought it's going to be a shoo-in for Leeds. I really thought it was just going to be 3 points. And, we had our chances. And you've maybe not seen it with Brentford as much post-lockdown. But pre-lockdown, there was still there was still that sort of notion that, you know, teams can come to Brentford or can play Brentford. You know, we mentioned Cardiff earlier, and they can neutralise them a little bit. I mean, you've not Brentford, not aside from Reading, really, which is in and around that area. You've not really left London yet, as well, which I thought was sort of an interesting point in these sort of last 4 or 5 games. Do you think sort of the long travel can play a factor?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't actually considered that. But yeah, I mean, our 2 away games have been Fulham and Reading, so we haven't gone more than 40 miles. But it's, yeah, maybe that does play into it a little bit. I'm really interested to see, you know, how the home advantage thing, you know, I don't feel like it's been that different to what it was pre-lockdown. We were seeing in Germany where teams were playing at home and they were, you know, the win ratio for home teams was just much lower than it used to be. But I feel like in the Championship, it hasn't had that much of a massive effect yet. But I think that in terms of our away games, we've only got 2 away games now. We're going to Derby on the weekend, and there are other ones at Stoke. And perhaps, yeah, it could be a bit of long travel, could be awkward fixtures, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know if the long travel comes into it, but I think we have been lucky to have this start where we haven't, you know, we've been in and around Brentford. The players have been able to, you know, get back after each game and, you know, work on their recovery, just go straight into training sessions. It's actually quite interesting against just after final whistle against Reading, they were doing a training session out on the pitch already. You know, it just shows the mentality of this Brentford team that, you know, an hour later, Pontus is out there leading the boys on a session. But we've been able to do that because we've been in and around London. Maybe the fatigue will kick in a little bit for some of the players with a bit of travelling. I'm not too sure. I don't know what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, mate. Because I mean, I thought naturally when we played, when Leeds played Luton, then I thought it was going to be a bit of a. I mean, you even look at West Brom, like Hull. I mean, when they were playing Hull didn't have that much respite really until they played West Brom, and Hull played really well at West Brom, probably the best they've played. But when Luton came to Ellen Road, you know, we were talking about it, and they had, I think it was a 2-3 day turnaround. As we know, it's been brilliant, hasn't it? Just having the football back. I think me and you need to start getting some work done. But I think it's that aspect of. Is it really a factor? I mean, in my head, it should be, because I'd be absolutely fuming if it was a 2-day period and Leeds had to go from, let's say, a Middlesbrough down to a Swansea. That I would see that as completely unfair. But Luton came to Leeds. Obviously, they'd just been to Swansea, came all the way up to Leeds, and they put in. I mean, Swansea, they won 1-0 down there. Came up to Leeds and got a draw and did, you know, played to the strength. So. I don't know. It is one of those. I think the crowd for a lot of teams, and we mentioned Millwall there. I think Millwall's the staple, because I genuinely thought with the fixtures they've got, they'd have been able to really get momentum. And I think they've struggled without that crowd there. And I think that is more of a factor. But we will see with regards to Brentford, whether or not that is going to be a factor, because we do have the quality there. Obviously, we know that Brentford have got quality everywhere, but I mean, throughout the season, Brentford haven't been unbeatable, have they?
Yeah, we haven't been unbeatable. That's true. I think what we found though, you know, the reason we're not in those top 2 right now is because of the start of the season. The start of the season, you know, some of our fans are perhaps glossing over it a little bit, but we dropped points because the new signings hadn't really bedded in. And it's a thing we have a lot of seasons. And, you know, we lost to Birmingham on the opening day. We dropped points at home to Stoke. We lost to Charlton. We drew at home to Hull. You know, these are games that are massively winnable, you know, looking at the rest of the season. But we just stumbled a bit at the start. And I think it was getting players, you know, bedded in to the squad. But at the moment, I would say we do look quite unbeatable. And I think it's that this lockdown has, you know, it's given us, you know, the players have gelled more and more and more as the season's gone on. It's given us even more time. And I know the club's so well run. I feel like if we're going to be unbeatable at any point in the season, it's now. And that's why I genuinely believe we could win the next 5. But yeah, I've got an interesting thing actually, because what you're saying about the fans, I feel like with Leeds, sometimes maybe the pressure, it's a bit of a pressure cooker, Ellen Road, isn't it? It can be. And maybe that's what's, held you back a little bit, maybe a few slip-ups. I think back to the playoff game last season with Derby. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but maybe the no fans at Ellen Road, do you feel like that could perhaps help the players?
Yeah, I mean, notoriously with Leeds as well, we're not blowing smoke here, but wherever we travel as well, we played Blackburn at the weekend, and we'd have had 8,000 fans there at Blackburn, and the rest in the home end. So it is one of those where not only is it at home with Leeds, but it's away from home as well. We the travel in ridiculous numbers. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think the home advantage, especially at Ellen Road, a lot of teams you'll hear managers saying it afterwards, sort of keeping it 0-0 at Ellen Road. The crowd are going to get on your backs, and you can tell it, you can feel it. I remember when when Leeds bottled it against Cardiff, really. We're 3-0 up and we drew the game 3-3. We were completely in control, and then you could feel it in the crowd. You could feel this level of anxiety. And I've always said it, Paul, putting on that white shirt is very different to putting on any other shirt, and because of just the pure size of the club, and the criticism you'll get when you're playing badly, but the praise you'll get when you're playing well. And I think, like you said, and I think you made a really good point in the terms of the technical teams will just get on with it. And I think we sort of thought saw that at the weekend. But if I'm being brutally honest with you, Paul, I don't think Leeds have hit top gear yet. And I think that's scary for other teams. But I also think, it's. I mean, we played Blackburn at the weekend. I'm sure you saw the highlights. There was a sort of 5-6 minute spell where Blackburn, they should have had 2, and we were quite lucky. They had a goal chalked off as well, which should have stood. And we were a little bit lucky with some of the decisions as well from the referee. We played well, but we didn't play well enough, but we got the result. But I think with regards to your question, I don't think it does impact Leeds in a positive way. I think it is more of a negative way because of the anxiety factor.
Yeah, I that's what I thought. Yeah, I feel like I just cast my mind back to that game against Derby last season. I know things didn't go your way perhaps, but it was a spectacle, wasn't it? And you almost felt like watching on TV. I could feel the energy in that stadium.
I think it's the expectation as well, Paul. It's because it's been 16, 17 years and the fans are trying to enjoy this period with Bielsa. But it is one of those things where you try and enjoy it, but it's difficult to enjoy it when you need to get back there and you want to get back there. And things could go very wrong for Leeds if we don't go up this season. There's a lot of things in place. Whereas maybe a Brentford or a Forest would still be able to build. A lot will go wrong for Leeds if this doesn't happen this season. So I still think there's a massive pressure on the players' shoulders, and let's hope they can just see it through. I do think Leeds will see it through. I do. I think we've just got enough. We've still got home games of Stoke, Charlton, Barnsley. So you'd expect at least sort of 7 points there, and I think even just 7 points will see us over the line.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's probably like it's a different mentality maybe this year. Bielsa's had a year under his belt with Leeds. There's no fans. Those are the kind of games you think you're not going to slip up this year. That might be what you're feeling. It's a different atmosphere to maybe last season. Where you went to Brentford, you came to Griffin Park, you dropped points. I think it was you dropped points at home to Wigan as well last season. And it's just, if that happens, there's the doubts that creep in. But if you haven't got the fans there, maybe the players can compartmentalize it a bit better and deal with those slip ups and just move on.
Yeah, and I think we talk about points in the season. I think with Brentford's point, it's been lockdown, and whatever's happened with your team, something has spurred you on. Whether or not that's just a consistency of Janssen and Pinnock at the back, whether or not, Ben Rama's hit an even newer level, which I genuinely think he has post-lockdown. But the turning point with Leeds was going away to Forest and getting I'll say it now. I think we were outplayed on the day. I don't think we did anything, you know. And Forest really played their game. Leeds played into Forest game, like we're talking about with Cardiff, like we're talking about with Luton. I mean, they beat us 2-0, and it was a well-deserved 2-0 win. And from then onwards, Leeds went away to Brentford. A lot of people were turning around saying we're going to get pumped, including myself. I watched it with you, I remember. But I thought, Paul, we were the better team on the day, and I thought Brentford were lucky to get away with it. And I think since then we had 5 wins, and I think the whole mentality. I think a Leeds of last season, you know, would have just completely melted down at that point, and it would have been you know, a 9-game spell where maybe we got 1 or 2 wins, 3 or 4 draws, and the rest were losses, and you just see us plummet. But every time there's been the old Leeds are falling apart again, Leeds seem to rise a little bit. You know, Luton, we drew to Luton, and West Brom hadn't scored a goal in 4, and we were the team that was falling apart. And then we went on and beat Blackburn. So I think there's just a bit of a mentality switch at this moment in time. But Paul, you're only as good as your last game, and I do genuinely think that has to be followed up with a win against Stoke. And if it's not, then that whole mentality thing, you do wonder then, is it to do with the crowd, or is it just embedded in the players?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest. But I think what we're seeing at Brentford, it's something that Pontus keeps saying. It's something that Thomas Frank keeps saying. We're taking it one game at a time. And I know that's just such an obvious thing to say, but I think they're able to do that now because they haven't got, you know, I'm coming on here and saying we could win 5, but it's all, you know, they're in their own headspace. They're just getting out there and doing their job on the day. And it's those teams who can do that, who can, you know, go one game at a time, just pick up the results, play the 90 minutes, who are, you know, going to get the points. It's really simple, but I feel like that kind of mentality has helped us just, you know, keep pushing on and keep this high standard up without thinking about perhaps, you know, slipping up. And actually, to be fair, yeah, we are 5 points behind. Yes, we might end up in the playoffs, but we haven't got any pressure on us like West Brom do or like Leeds do. Really, you know, we haven't really got anything to lose. We're assured of a playoff space, you know, pretty much. I don't see us not making the playoffs. So we're playing without pressure, and I think that can help as well at this stage.
Yes, that's a really good point, Paul. It is the fact that, you know, West Brom have been out of it, you know, for a couple, 2 or 3 years now, and there is a demand there for them to get back, especially with the players they've got on the books. But like you were saying with Leeds, it's a huge pressure to get back there. And Thomas Frank, I don't know whether or not it was mind games, but I genuinely don't, when he said the 11 points to Leeds or West Brom is too much. And I believed him, and a lot of people will still believe him. They will still believe him. But you know, it is one of those where I mean, if you're a Brentford fan, you're not disappointed with the playoff spot, are you?
No, not at all. I think it's, you know, when we got promoted to the Championship, we hit the playoffs with, you know, a decent team, likes of Andre Gray, Tarkowski, Alex Pritchard, guys like that. You know, that was a good team, but we are levels above that with this team. And yes, we long for the Premier League, you know, to finally get our name out there as a club. But at the same time, you know, coming into this season, if you'd said we were going to get playoffs, you know, I'd snap my hand off. I believed we would do it, but at the same time, you know, it's one of those things that often doesn't quite fall into place. You know, we have that start of the season where we're suddenly like, oh, we're looking over our shoulder at the other end of the table, and then we pick it up around October and we push on. But this year, you know, to be in the position we're in is fantastic, and it's the best football that, you know, I've seen. I know I've only been a fan for 8 years, but it's the best football I've seen at Brentford. And I think a lot of older fans are saying it's the best football they've ever seen at Griffin Park. And to be in this position is fantastic at this stage of the season. I would not be disappointed with playoffs. It's just that we've managed to pull it back a little bit now, that if we can take that opportunity, that's great. But I think the message from the club is that don't expect automatic promotion. We're just taking it one game at a time. And if we reach the playoffs, we'll know what to do because we're playing well at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Sean's just said here, I still think Leeds and West Brom will get the top 2. Fair play to Brentford as they've been on fire since the restart, but they may run out of games to catch the top 2. So, I mean, I've mentioned this already, Paul. But when people say the amount of games you're running out of, we talked about the psychology earlier on. I mean, if Leeds sort of do win midweek and West Brom win, obviously you boys win, will you class that as a disappointing week for Brentford?
It's a strange one, really, because when we've had these good results recently, I've been over the moon with how we've played, and then I see Leeds pick up 3 points, West Brom pick up 3 points, and it flattens it a little bit. I think we are looking up as a club. We are looking at those top 2 spots, and it is disappointing when the other teams pick up points. But I think we have to realise that if we just keep playing well and we keep winning, I think we still need West Brom to slip up, or we still need Leeds to really slip up. So, we're not just going to be able to catch them ourselves, if you see what I mean. So I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be massively disappointing if we play if West Brom and Leeds go up in the top 2. It's not going to be massively disappointing so long as we have done ourselves proud with huge results, really strong results to end the season, because then we go into the playoffs believing that we can do it. I think if we slip up against Derby on the weekend and perhaps West Brom don't in midweek, then that's more of a concern. But I think if Derby, I feel like, are the team who are going to cause West Brom problems, and I feel like if we can beat Derby and West Brom don't, that's when it's going to get really exciting.
Yeah, and a really interesting comment from Mr. DT Does Stuff here, who is the West Bromwich Albion fan, who's commenting. Thank you for that. Guys, as well, we're sort of an hour and 5 into the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do that with the notification bell switched on, and please do like the video for similar content so that we know we're doing the right thing. So he said, if us and West Brom, us being West Bromwich Albion, win today and tomorrow, it puts huge pressure on Leeds on Thursday. Especially with Stoke planning to put 11 men behind the ball. I mean, there's so much to dissect in that question. Obviously, there's West Brom and Brentford winning in to a massive game for West Brom. If they can get 3 points there, then fair play. Obviously, Brentford, I think more of us are thinking, I mean, that's going to be a bit of a shoe. And I personally think Brentford are going to absolutely hammer Charlton tonight. I think it's just going to be, I just think you've just got too much for them. And you seem to be able to break that low block too easily for teams to just sit in and defend against you. But with Leeds, sometimes we have seen issues, i.e. Luton, i.e. Charlton, of teams just playing that low block and just sitting in and waiting for Leeds to make a mistake. And I'll be honest with you, Paul, every chance a team gets against Leeds, it might be 1, it might be 2 chances a game. Every chance seems to go in, whether or not it be an absolutely emphatic finish from Robert Glatzel at Cardiff with his first touch of the ball, to Harry Cornick sizing Ben White up, bending it round, putting it in the top corner above a 6'7" keeper. It really is unbelievable, the chance conversion against Leeds. But do you fit into that notion that if West Brom and Brentford win today, it does put huge pressure on Leeds in front of the Sky cameras, everybody watching? And is it an opportunity for Stoke to put 11 behind the ball, or will Stoke actually try and come at Leeds? Obviously, game's running out. They need to get out of that relegation scrap, really, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think we will win tonight, and I think for us, if West Brom win tonight, yes, the pressure could go on to Leeds. I feel like as a Brentford fan, I feel like we've been looking at West Brom the last couple of weeks as a team to catch. But it could be Leeds, you never know. And it does put pressure on them. We'll be 3 points behind you. West Brom would be, what would they be? They'd be ahead of you, 2 points ahead. So, it does put that pressure on. I think Stoke as well, as I said earlier, with Wigan potentially getting points deductions, Sheffield Wednesday potentially getting points deductions, I think Stoke are possibly clear of relegation already, unless they have a really bad end to the season. I think, they might play 11 behind the ball. It might be really difficult. It might be one of those teams that Leeds struggle to break down. But at the same time, I don't know. I've got a feeling that West Brom are going to be the team to slip up, and that's my honest opinion. I think Derby are difficult, and it's a huge game tonight. It's an absolutely huge game for the whole nature of this top 3 race.
Massive 2 or 3 days, isn't it, Paul? Huge
yeah.
2 or 3 days.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to 4 games left, which is this weekend, you're then able to look at it a bit more and able to say, well, they'll pick up points there and they won't pick them up there, and you may be able to work it out a little bit better. But this West Brom derby game is, it's massive. It's massive tonight. I think for us, if we drop points today against Charlton, which I don't see happening, but if it does happen, I think all toes have gone. I think we still, particularly Charlton at home, it's the game that we really, really must be winning. If we drop points to Charlton, are we going to beat Derby on the weekend? Perhaps not. But I think the way that we've been playing, I think we will win tonight comfortably. I think West Brom, the team that I would say we're still chasing. I think the pressure does go on to Leeds if we both win, but I think it will be a Leeds top in the table, West Brom, Brentford scrapping for that second spot.
So, we've touched on it, and there's another absolutely monumental game, Paul, today in the Championship. We've got Nottingham Forest against Fulham. Now, we're looking at sort of Forest fixtures. They've got a few very tough fixtures. I actually think Forest have got the hardest running, but I think Forest are sort of better against the better footballing teams because they know how to neutralise them a little bit. So the next sort of three, it's Forest at home to Fulham, Forest away at Preston, who've not had the best restart really, and then Forest at home to Swansea. Are they out of it? Mate, there was a period where they were obviously, you had a game in hand, but they went to third for a little part the other day.
Yeah, they did. I feel like perhaps Forest could still be in it, but I think it's this. If they beat Fulham tonight, they'll have confidence, no doubt. They're the kind of team that can go to Preston and get a result, go to Swansea and get a result. But then with Forest, if they are that team that are, capable of beating anyone on their day, why aren't they in those positions already? And it's because they've got these slip-ups, I feel. There are games where, you've expected them to pick up points and they haven't. It's not like they're only losing to the teams above them. They are beating teams above them. They're taking points off teams above them, but they're losing points in these games where you feel like, they've got to come out and play a little bit more on the ball. Maybe, they've got to take the initiative themselves, and teams, almost, again, as we were saying, play Forest at their own game. And that's why I feel perhaps it's just a little bit too far for Forest. But then again, I said Brentford were probably out of it about start of March. And we've kind of turned it around a little bit. And, it's all just it's what happens in these next few games. And this is whether West Brom can pick up a result tonight that I think determines so much of what we're going to see.
And do you think Sean once again has had a really good point here. Derby have a massive say in the top two race. They still have to play all three. How big of a role have Derby got to play?
Huge, isn't it? It's just huge. And that you look at the fixtures that the top three have got left. And from a Brentford point of view, Derby is the one that's sticking out as the most likely to drop points in. I think West Brom, yes, they're at home to them, but does that really mean anything anymore? I'm not too sure. I think it's where Derby pick up those points is, if they beat Leeds and lose to the other two, that really throws the race. If they win all three, then it's kind of status quo, isn't it? But I think it's which Derby you face, and it's how, because as you say, each of the top three's got to play Derby. It's how we each deal with Rooney, and how we, what Derby turn up on the day. And I think what we saw on the weekend against Forest, Forest have almost given a little bit of an example of how to counter Derby, but it's just whether any of the top three can replicate that. But I think it's a massive role they've got, massive role in this race.
Yeah, I completely agree. West Brom are sort of lucky that they're playing them now, because I think Waghorn and Rooney and Louis Sibley, I think they've all built up a really nice relationship. Obviously, they've still got Jack Marriott, who probably will end up somehow playing against Leeds, which I love playing against Jack Marriott. It's my favourite thing. Always seems to have a wonderful game against Leeds. But it is one of those where I think they've got a huge way of playing, and I think sort of, they've got a point to prove as well, Derby. I think they've got a point to prove. You know, a lot of people like myself were writing them off, and they've been an unbelievable run. And they'll love nothing more, especially with Leeds. They'll love to disrupt everything that's going on. And I think that they are the hardest fixture, probably, that all teams have got to come up against, really. I mean, from a Leeds perspective, I think Derby are probably going to be the toughest fixture we've got left. It sounds like with you, you're also saying Derby as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you've also got. Is it true that Preston have also got? Brentford have also got Preston to play away as well?
We've got Preston at home. So yeah, I'm looking at that as a little bit easier, because Preston they've been decent this season, but cracks are starting to show, I feel, with them. I always felt they were punching above their weight in terms of being in that 6th spot earlier on, and post lockdown we're seeing that kind of, maybe they just haven't quite got the quality to match teams like Brentford. I feel like at home we should beat them, but again, yeah, it's a potential slip up, that one, no doubt about it. And I think if we don't get a result against Derby, we'll be looking at that game as another, the nerves will be jangling a little bit. But I'm not thinking about Preston at the moment. I'm thinking about get 3 points tonight against Charlton. Then we got Derby on the weekend, and if we can get 2 wins out of 2 now, that's confidence is sky high, and I think that just be massive for the players.
How many points can Brentford afford to lose?
Well, obviously it all depends on the top 2, but I say we can't afford to lose any, really. I think you look at West Brom, they've got Slaven Bilic in charge. I feel like he's the kind of manager that will get the most out of his players when the pressure is on. I feel like with Bielsa, you've got another massively experienced manager. No, it perhaps didn't go to plan last season, but I feel like if West Brom and Leeds are going to drop 5 and 6 points respectively, we obviously can't drop any. So we have to win every game, and that's why I'd say, it's win or bust. But at the same time, because of the playoffs, I feel I'm not worried about it, but I am just hoping that we win every game, because we need to. It would be so good to have that, that top 2, that security of getting there. I think if we do get there, it will be on goal difference. I don't think there's going to be much in it at all. I think it's going to go right down to the wire, to be honest. Whether it goes down to the last game of the season, I know we've got Barnsley at home on the last day. West Brom have got QPR at home. Both winnable games. So it's these next few fixtures, these derbies. Us against Preston, West Brom. I can't remember who else there. They've got another couple of tricky fixtures.
They've got I think West Brom. They've also got Fulham at home, haven't they? They've got Derby away. So I mean, from a personal perspective, the thing is West Brom. They're always free scoring, aren't they? And they do leak goals, but they're just free scoring. The past 2 games from scoring 0 out of 4 games, they're just very streaky when they score as well. Like suddenly they've scored 7 in 2, and they scored no goals in 4 games. It is just West Brom are so unpredictable. Yeah,
they are. It's strange, really, because when they came out of the break, they drew at home to Birmingham, and I was like, that's a great result for us. And that result has sort of kept us in the race, and then we go and beat them, take points off them, we close the gap. But then they've kind of they've got the rub of the green at the moment, and they've just picked up a couple of wins. I feel like, as MT's just said, I think Derby is the tricky game. I think West Brom on their day will beat Fulham. I'm not just saying that because
I agree.
I actually think that West Brom have got the quality there. They're streaky. You're right. They're very streaky. I think the way that Bilic, he's got experience, and they've got real experience in that squad. Guys who've been promoted in the past. I'm sure if they can get the results against Derby, that's huge for them. That is absolutely huge for them. And I think we look at that game now, that is the game that we need them to slip up to close the gap. And that's the bottom line of it, really.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race. With regards to sort of when you played West Brom, for me that didn't look like the normal West Brom. When we played them, maybe that's kudos to Brentford, really, for sort of neutralising them. But I don't think we saw the best of their best players. When we played West Brom, certainly at home at Ellen Road, that second half was one of the first times ever under Bielsa that Leeds have had to put in an absolutely mesmeric second half defensive display. Pereira was fantastic. And it was one of those games where they really came to town and showed why they are, one of the best teams in the division. What do you think it was when you played them that sort of neutralised their main players and just made it sort of pretty? I thought Brentford were by far the better team when you played West Brom.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think we were. I wouldn't say we were levels ahead, but we had the game plan. It was the game plan that really did it. And I think the timing of the goal was important. I think we needed a goal in that first 20 minutes when it was a bit back and forth. But I think both teams went into it a little bit cagey, quite strong defensively, both teams. But yeah, when we got that goal, it was the game plan, the organisation. And it's, as I've highlighted earlier, Pinnock and Janssen as a partnership, they were dealing with that one man up top. And in midfield, we were overrunning them. They had Sawyers and Livermore in midfield, and we had three men in there just doing so much work. And it was the thing that we highlighted after the game. It was the desire to defend that we saw from Brentford. We've seen quite a lot under Thomas Frank, but it's that we just get back in numbers. Honestly, I think this team, the stamina of this Brentford team, all these players could run miles every game, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge because it's the intensity of the defensive side of things. We just sort of stifled them. They couldn't really get anywhere. I felt Pereira had a few good moments where he was, he showed his quality on the ball, but we just kept him away from the danger area. He was, all his nice little dribbles were about 30 yards out. And as well, Diangana as well. I think he's a brilliant player, Diangana. But we just seem to control him a little bit. They had one really good chance where, it wasn't really a great chance. It dropped to Zahor on the edge of the box and he smashes one against the bar from 20 yards. And that was really the only time they came close. And we're able to, the way we're defending at the moment, this is why I feel like we can win more games now than people would put us down for, is that we're defending in such a way that we defend our box so well, we can shut teams out and we just limit them to half chances. I think that was really what did it for us.
Has there been a marked improvement? Because we're going to touch on just West Brom and their sort of players in a sec. But whilst you were talking there, I was just thinking to myself, we're talking about Janssen coming back from injury. What about a small little creative spark that comes under the name of Emiliano Marcondes? Because for me, as soon as he's come into this fold, you've got the front three we always talk about, but I think he's just made such a difference. And I remember watching the game at Fulham, and he was the difference maker by far.
Oh, 100%. I think, Marcondes is a really interesting one because he hasn't always gone well for him at Brentford. He joined a couple of years ago, and sometimes, fans have gotten his back a little bit. He hasn't quite been able to deliver the performances. He's been played up front in the past, and he just hasn't quite, got on with it. He was loaned out at the start of this season to Denmark. He's come back and he's just looked a different player. He's just on song. It's his delivery, his set piece delivery is absolutely mustard. It's so good. And his corners are always just spot on. And we score a lot of goals from set pieces now, and I think a lot of that is to do with him. And he's come into the side to replace Jensen in the last couple of games. Jensen's been out with an injury, and they're very similar players. But Marcondes, he's very hard to pin down. He's very precise. His passing is always spot on, and that's what I think. He's always putting those balls into the danger area that are accurate. They're always accurate. And you point out the Fulham game. He came off the bench and he just had that. He just looked so calm and cool and collected, and he was just playing on almost like a different level to everyone else on the pitch. And he turned that game around for us. He puts the ball in for Ben Rama right on a plate. With 3 minutes to go, just right across the face of goal to the back stick. It's a brilliant assist. And then his second goal, he's got the composure just to check back and then tuck it past Rodak. And it was just, he came off the bench and he changed that game for us. And it's put us on this trajectory now. And I agree. I think he goes under the radar a bit for teams that, for fans who aren't necessarily watching Brentford intricately, you think of the front three, you think of Janssen, you might think of Pinnock, you don't think about Marcondes, and he's been fantastic. I think De Silva as well is another one who, is brilliant. He's just brilliant. The way his energy, the stride, the way he runs forward, and he's constantly back and two, and he's got a real finish on him as well. He scored so many goals this season from midfield, and yeah, I mean, I look at this team and I don't see a weakness in our team, and it's delightful to say that, to be able to say that, and you look at that starting 11, and it's just there's strengths everywhere.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think full rounded. I think we've done previews at the start of the season. I think rounded squad. I think yours is just, you've got the depth as well, which I think is key. But it's interesting. We talk about sort of Janssen coming back from injury. We talk about Marcondes coming back into the fray. That is a little bit of, it's two signings in a way, because Janssen, when he was out and you had Janvier in there, didn't really work for me. Didn't really work. He didn't have the balance, didn't have the relationship between him and Pinnock. And I think as soon as Janssen's come back in, he showed it up, like you say, he's a voice. Marcondes coming in, he's a bit of flair up front. So in a sense, you've sort of got two new signings there. And with regards to West Brom, obviously, I mean, previously they've had Diangana out injured for a period of time. When he comes back, and it seems when Pereira and Diangana are on song, I mean, Diangana scored at the weekend. I think Pereira got 3 assists. I think at Sheffield Wednesday, he got 2 goals and was heavily involved in the first. We're seeing Charlie Austin starting to score goals, and I know Charlie Austin is a lot. Everyone's talking about his weight and all this sort of stuff, but he's still there and thereabouts. So it is one of those things where it is we're talking about West Brom and we're thinking to ourselves, well, they're done and dusted. But these sort of players, these elements of quality who are coming into the squads for Brentford and West Brom, could they be a bit of a difference maker and maybe heap the pressure on a team like Leeds?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that. I think for us, we've had, Janssen and Marcondes have been massive for us, like everyone in this team. But I think the way that we play is very much as a team, and it's very much a team structure. I think we'll grind out the results, no matter who we're against. We won't rely. Yes, we've got some brilliant individual players, but we don't rely on that so much at the moment, which is really good to see. I think with West Brom, I think Pereira, he is, it's an absolute steal that they've got him for 9 million on a permanent. I think that's fantastic business, and he is a real talent. He's just, when he's on the ball, it just sticks to his foot, doesn't it? He's just dribbling down that, and he just puts the ball into little spaces. The assists he gets are just, from an outside perspective, he's fantastic. And I think he's the kind of player that could, he can give you those moments in games which will lead to goals, which then, lead to the wins, and it puts the pressure on teams like Leeds. Yes, you've got, Pablo Hernandez, who arguably can do the same kind of thing, but do you actually feel like Pablo's got that level in there this season? He's able to pull Leeds out of some holes. Yeah,
it's an interesting. From a biased perspective, he said there. DT has just said there. I feel Pereira is the best in the league. Jimmy Turner said Pablo better than Pereira. Still running things for big periods of games at his age. He's the creative force for Leeds. I mean, Paul, I don't know if you've sort of caught when Pablo has been part of it. I mean, he's sort of had a bit of an injury, but when he comes back in, it is Leeds transform. It is, we'll be struggling. We'll have that, what I notice is maybe with Pereira, maybe with Ben Rama, individually, they can just create moments of magic. Well, Pablo, maybe for me, doesn't have that level of being able to get the ball and just put the ball in from 20 yards, which maybe a Pereira and a Ben Rama does. He's done it over the years, but you don't see it as much this season. But what Pablo does is he increases everybody's levels around him. And, Click's not the same player when he's not there. Roberts isn't if he's featuring. Calvin definitely isn't. Calvin's nowhere near as good as he is when Pablo's in the team, because he can just focus on his job. He doesn't have to look at roaming forward, give the ball to Pablo, and he'll take risks. And that's what all these quality playmakers do. I think they take risks. And I think the quality playmakers are the ones that the risk to reward factor is so narrow. And And I think Pablo has made such a difference these last couple of games in terms of just coming on. And what I'd like to do is have a starter like Tyler Roberts. And then for him just to be a little bit consistent, because he's got the ability to get, he'll be a Premier League player. He's only 21. He's a very good player. Just needs to stay away from injury. But if we can start bringing Pablo on as just the utility to control the game in the second half, that's huge. And not been as good as last season, but I still think his impact is still massive on this Leeds team. And we would be nowhere near where we are now, Paul, without that little man. But I think we've all got these little men, haven't we, who are just creative sparks, and it's gonna be a really interesting end to the season. So let's finish, mate. We've been going for an hour and 30 now, which is great. Yeah. Let's finish on your team of the season so far. Obviously, we've still got 5 games left, but I think everyone's been talking about it on Twitter, and this might take us a little while. So what are your choices? What formation are you going for? And you need to give a bit of validation for each and every player, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think I've had a long hard think about this, and it's actually quite strange. My team is very much top 3 with a Forest player. It's, I haven't really looked elsewhere, because for me there's a couple of players that might get in. Guys like Eze at QPR, who's fantastic. Guys like Anthony Robinson at Wigan at left back, who's brilliant. He's target of AC Milan. But for me, it's those players who are playing for the top teams who've really shown their class this season. So I've gone for a 4-2-3-1 formation. Got 2 holding midfielders, and then sort of like a front 4, if you will, kind of a bit fluid. In net, I've gone for Bryce Samba, as we've previously talked about him at Forest. He's just been big for them, hasn't he? And he's lifted that level. His defence have got a confidence in him, which arguably Forest haven't had before this season. I think he is the main reason why they've shot up the table. So yeah, for me, he was a shoo-in at keeper. I think you look at Leeds, Kiko Casilla, perhaps not.
Nope.
Sam Johnston's. I like Sam Johnston as a keeper, but
what about Marek Rodak?
Marek Rodak, yeah, that was another one that I considered. I think he's saved Fulham in a lot of games. I think you look at Mitrovic and he's been the go-to guy, but at the other end, Rodak has been fantastic for him. But yeah, he's in the running, but I'm just edging towards Bryce Samba, to be honest. So yeah, then across the defence, I've tried not to be too Brentford orientated here. So I looked at right back, and I thought, yeah, Dalsgaard's been brilliant for us this season. Really, really looks like a Prem quality defender, I think. So underrated. At right back though, it was a toss up between Matty Cash at Forest and Luke Ayling, and I've gone with Ayling just because I think when you had that lull around New Year and it was looking like maybe Leeds were starting to fall apart again, Luke Ayling was the guy popping up with the goals. He was the big leader who was getting those crucial goals for you, which is really bizarre from right back. But that's you need that kind of leader in the team.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of games, Paul, really. Obviously, the Huddersfield game where he scored that brilliant goal, and then the absolute humdinger at Birmingham, the 4-5, where he grabs players and he really is a leader, and he's come to the fore massively this season, I think. And yeah, well, we've got 2 on the same spot so far, mate. I'd go with the exact same 2 so far.
Yeah, and then at centre back, I think Ben White has been fantastic. I think he has been really good, and he came in. I didn't know who he was when he joined Leeds. I'd never heard of him before. I thought he's a loan signing from Brighton. Maybe he's a squad player for you, but he's the way that he can, his calmness, his composure, the way he plays the ball out from the back. He's such a Bielsa player, and if you can keep him for next season, if you can somehow get promoted and keep him on your books, how much would you spend on Ben White? It's got.
Yeah, I think there's a few rumours of people saying, we're going for this Argentinian defender apparently who's Bielsa knows of, and he's 25 million. And you think, well, okay, well, if Brighton put a 30 million price tag on Ben White, you've got to go and get him. Mm-hmm. There's been comparisons this season of sort of a Rio Ferdinand and John Stones-esque play. The kid's so young, he's only 22. and he will go on to amazing things. You know, Leeds have registered, what is it, 17, 18 clean sheets. And when Janssen went, it's really interesting we've got you on here, Paul, because when Janssen went, we all turned around and thought, right, okay, it probably is the good move. He doesn't fit into how we are as a club. And that replacement, he was supposed to be an understudy. We all thought he was an understudy, and we were getting the proper signing a bit later on down the line. Didn't happen. We were all panicking, and then we saw his performance against Bristol City. He's the best defender I've ever seen at Ellen Road, Paul. The best defender. He is. It's a huge statement, but he's outrageous. Outrageous how he brings the ball out. He turns into a midfielder. You know, he was in Blackburn. He's playing on the edge of the box, playing intricate balls into Harrison and Costa. His pass percentage, his tackle completion. I look at the only time I've seen him been beaten really one-on-one is that Harry Cornick finish, and I don't really think he was beaten one-on-one. I think it was just Cornick bent the ball around him. It's a brilliant finish, but he's just, we will be nowhere near where we are with that guy. Nowhere near. So yeah, I'd give a bit of validation to that one as well.
Yeah, I think for the second centre back, I was a bit torn. I feel like I want to put Pinnock in there because I think he's fantastic, but I've changed it up. I thought, you know, try and remove my bias a little bit from this. And because Pinnock had that, you know, that spell when Janssen was out and he wasn't really, you know, he wasn't on his top form alongside Janvier, I thought you perhaps alongside of Ben White, you might need someone who's a little bit more rough and tumble. So I've gone with Semi Ajayi of West Brom. I think he's been fantastic this season. Goal threat from set pieces is the thing that sticks out for me. He scored 7 in the league this season. But, you know, West Brom haven't, people looking at Leeds' defence, Brentford's defence, everyone's saying, you know, they're the strong defences. West Brom are, you know, a strong defence as well. And I think Semi Ajayi coming in, he's gone under the radar perhaps for some, you know, for some fans, like some Brentford fans. But I feel like he gets in there ahead of Pinnock for me just because it's the consistency he's delivered this season. But it is a really close call. And I do love Pinnock, and I think Pinnock is currently a better player. But for the team of the season, I would go Ajayi.
Once again, mate, yeah, I'm reading mine out, and you've got mine's the exact same. I think arguably steal of the season. You know, obviously you boys paid $3 million for Pinnock, which I've got a friend who's a Barnsley fan, and I completely banter him about that all the time. But 1.5 million from Rotherham. His ability to read the game, his pace, his strength. I sort of feel like with Ben White, with Pinnock, with Ajayi, what it allows the teams to do is naturally you can play a high defensive line, because like we see with Kyle Walker for City, if their block is ever exposed, that high line, you need someone with pace, you need someone who's long, who's a bit gangly, like a Pinnock, like an Ajayi, not really like a Ben White, but he's got the attributes to get back there anyway. And I feel that enables the better technical teams to play with a higher defensive line. And I think Ajayi enables West Brom, and he's been a huge signing, integral to the success. And yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So now we move on to the left back.
I think this is where we're going to have a little bit of a difference, to be honest.
Yeah,
I've gone with Rico Henry, and I can't not go with Rico Henry. For me, he's my favourite player, and he's underrated. He flies under the radar, I think. He is absolutely fantastic. He gets forward so much in games. He gets back. He's everywhere on that left-hand side. He puts in really good crosses. His link-up play on that left-hand side with our midfielders, with our front three is brilliant. I think he's the best left back in the league, and he's young as well. He's got so much potential. He is a Premier League player in waiting, and yeah, I mean, he's just everywhere, and he's done really well this season as well. He's been blighted by injuries in the past, but this season he's managed to play. I think he's played every game for us, all but every game. You know, it's pretty much every game. And it's just, that's something that we maybe didn't think we were going to get from him, but what that, you know, continual run of games has shown is that he is really just a top quality left back. He gets forward so much, gets back so much. He's just an engine. And as well, I think he's quite a small player, you know, and you might not think that in the physical battle that he's up for it, but he seems to win so many of his 50-50s. It surprises me. That side of his game is so strong. I think that's what's edged him in there for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, you might think this is a nice one, Paul. I'm sure you will. But for me, I think Owen Jacko's put it well. The left back has to be Stu. It's got to be Stuart Dallas. Quality-wise, I would completely agree with you. I think quality-wise, Rico Henry, young, quick, naturally gifted, left-sided, which is, you talk about a left back and the fact I'm actually chucking Stuart Dallas, a right winger at left back, is unbelievable. But, the transition that this kid has made, Paul, he's been our player of the season again. Not again, but he steps up in every scenario where Leeds are under the cosh. Villa last year, Derby, he was the only player who turned up. He's just a brilliant asset to the club, and I think for how much we actually got him for from Brentford, he's been a superb servant from the club. And we're talking about players that Brentford move on. Maybe that was a bit of a bad decision from Brentford.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'd say it was a bad decision, but I think you've definitely got the best out of him. I think at Brentford, he was sort of in and around the first team, but he was never quite, that guy you look to. I think it's because of the utility nature that he has that, we had our system and maybe he didn't quite fit in. I think I love Stuart Dallas. I think he's a brilliant player, but I think for Leeds, he has been perfect. He's a perfect fit. Really, he kind of embodies what the club culture is all about, I feel.
Yeah, and the thing is, Paul, as well, sort of Rico Henry's stats. I don't think he's statistically probably the best. I think you actually look and break down who gets forward more, who gets more assists, who gets more goals. It probably would lean in the favour of Stuart Dallas. I think Dallas has got 5 this year. I don't think Henry's got any. I think he's got a couple of assists, but I think that Dallas has got 3 or 4. They played about the same amount of games, so probably statistic-wise, and we've got as a defensive outlet this season, we've had 18 clean sheets, and he's been pretty much every single part of that. So, I mean, for me, he's definitely there, technical-wise and ability-wise. I think as an overall player, I think Rico Henry is by far the better player, but I think just based on a seasonal perspective, I think Dallas is probably my left back.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Sort of moving on to midfield now. So I've gone for 2 sort of holding midfielders, but I think these players are both good enough, going forward as well, and they're integral to the teams. And it's Leeds and Brentford. It's Calvin Phillips and Christian Norgard. I think Calvin Phillips, he's a contender for Player of the Season. He's England international in waiting, I think. To be fair, I haven't seen as much of him as I'd like to have. So I think you can probably step in. I'm sure he's in your team, and you can sort of go over his qualities. But I'll just touch on Norgard first, because for us, I think we've had we've got 5-6 contenders for our Player of the Season at Brentford. But for me, Norgard is he's what we've been needing in midfield. He's that destructive number 6 who he's everywhere defensively. He wins all his 50-50s. He's just what you want in front of the back 4, but also what we've seen definitely what I've seen in the last few games. Going forward, his range of passing is spectacular. He's so good at just delivering those long through balls. He gets into the box as well. He sometimes gets forward. He's not just a sitting midfielder. And I think, again, another one of the Brentford players who perhaps is underappreciated outside the club.
Yeah, I really like Norgard. I think he's quality. I think I watched him earlier on, and just his ability to close down Tom Kearney in the game against Fulham. Kearney just couldn't get a sniff against him. I think he's been brilliant. I think another sort of shout is probably Romain Sawyers at West Brom. Sawyers has been absolutely brilliant for West Brom this season. Obviously, I think they got him from you for about 4 million. I don't think there's much between both players, to be honest. It was a really interesting move by Brentford to let him go, and then obviously Norgard in that defensive role. But I think I would also throw in there. What about Ben Watson? I think Ben Watson's had a cracking season for Forest. The wily old man, but he ticks. He makes Forest tick. But yeah, I've gone for a little bit of a 4-4-2 formation, mate. So I've gone with in the centre. I've gone with Calvin. I mean, wow, just what 35 million pound player in waiting. I've not seen anyone beat him one-on-one. He's just, I think my second player has done, who I'm going to put in the side, and who gives him probably his toughest test, really. But I remember, we're all talking about Jack Grealish this season, and how he's going to move on to better things and go for 50, whatever it is, million, 60 million. I think Grealish has been brilliant this season. He couldn't lace it. He couldn't touch Calvin. He couldn't get past him. Too strong, too physically gifted, too good on the ball. It's one touch, out your feet, 50-yard ball. And without him, Paul, once again, and I keep saying without him, we wouldn't be the same team. So maybe I'm not doing Leeds enough justice. Maybe it is a unit, and maybe, there's more people to this unit instead of just Pablo Hernandez and Calvin Phillips. But as you say, Paul, he's a magnificent player. He really is, isn't it? And if we don't go up this year, I would never begrudge him from moving on. Never, because he stuck with us for this year. And he didn't have to. We had offers. Apparently Tottenham had put an offer down, and Leeds rejected it, wanted him for another year. So, yeah. And my obviously, you were talking about Norgard there. My second is Eze. I think Eze's just, he's got to be a Premier League player in the making. He's shown everything this term, sort of quality, strength, ability. He can play centre midfield. He can play a 10. But he's just raised his standards for me. Actually, post-lockdown, he's not been amazing, but 12 goals and 8 assists for a QPR side who've really been struggling. And you've got the likes of Jordan Hugill as your main striker, and he's doing stuff like that. I'd stick Eze in my second.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point about Eze. Perhaps one of the reasons I was a bit reluctant to pick him, obviously, as a QPR player, but it was, I think, one of my reasons for not going for him perhaps is because he is that focal point in that team, and he will be the one who is doing everything. So no wonder his stats are so high. Yeah. Under Warburton, they've been quite an attack-minded team. So he has been, they are on the ball a lot, and he does get a chance to show his abilities. But yeah, I don't know. I was very, very close to putting them in, but yeah, I just couldn't do it.
So who have you gone for your 3 then?
Yeah, so I've gone Matthias Pereira, Matias Pereira, however you say it, in at Cam. I think for West Brom, he's just a, again, real quality player. He has those moments where he can just put the ball into the box right onto the striker's nose. He's a real gem in this league, isn't he? And I think I didn't really realise it so much. I'd heard all about him. I didn't really realise it until I watched him play us recently. And I thought, yeah, even though he hasn't been in these good, strong areas, he's still on the ball is so dangerous. And just, whenever he gets a little bit of a pocket space, you're just a little bit nervous. And I think, his assists as well, his assist tally is ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. And I think that's why he's in there for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's probably arguably the best player in the division. Obviously, I know Benrahma's there. It's got to be tight between those two. Obviously, I've got to give a little bit of a mention to Pablo as well, but I don't think his season has been as sort of fruitful. But I think Pereira, I think he's got something like 18 assists, and I believe he scored sort of like 8 or 9 goals this year. I mean, that is just, it's phenomenal, and he continues to do it. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday bagged 2 goals. Hawley gets 3 assists. It's weekly and it's consistent when he's not injured and he's featuring. So yeah, he would be on my right side of my 4-4-2 formation. I think he can play in a 10, as you said, Paul, an outstanding eye for a pass. I think maybe with Benrahma, what you'll get naturally is just the finish. And, that's not discrediting Benrahma, because he's got many assists as well. But I think Pereira, it's just Ivan Edel stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, I'll sort of move on to my left-hand side, and I think this is an obvious pick from me, isn't it? It's going to be Benrahma. And he's just, Chelsea have apparently rumoured in for him for 60 million. I'm not surprised. I'm genuinely not surprised he's that good. And
Well, I've heard someone. Paul, sorry to interject, but I've heard a podcast the other day, and we were just it was talking about Ben Rama, and we talk about the step up of players, and you look at someone like Jared Bowen. I mean, on absolute fire, but to maybe a West Ham, and we talk about actually players from the Championship getting into that top four. I can't ever think of that happening. If you guys can, put it in the comment section below. But I mean, people talking about 60 million. I mean, is this kid going to be sort of the first player from the Championship to make that transition into a top four team in the Premier League?
I think a lot of that depends on the desperation of those top four teams. I don't think Chelsea need him for 60 million. I think that could just be one of those, folly rumours that's just flying around. Whether he goes to a top four side, I'm not sure.
Is he better than Pereira?
It's a big question, isn't it? They're different in the way that they play. Ultimately they are the guys that you can turn to for a moment of magic. I think Ben Rama perhaps is a bit more selfish in a way. That's again not a discredit to him. I think he's always looking to take players on, and then he delivers his ball. Whereas Pereira's got his head up straight away, and he's looking to play that system. I think both players in a team would work really well together. Because I think Pereira's more maybe of your main man. Ben Rama perhaps is an outlet who you can rely on to be really good. Whether going back to that question, whether he goes to a top four team, not too sure about that. I still don't feel like any club will put that sort of money onto a Championship player straight out of the Championship. I think maybe, say we go up and he's for some reason decides to stay with us, then perhaps after in the January window, that sort of money gets talked about if he proves himself in the Prem. But there's still that idea that players still need to prove themselves in the Prem. And I just don't feel like the top four would go for him for that much money. I think we'd be able to get more money out of a team like a West Ham and Newcastle and Everton. Obviously, I don't want that to happen, but I think, I just don't think that's him going to Chelsea is a realistic thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was just that it was a bit of a devil's advocate question, really. I don't. I think he's a wonderful player. I really do. But it's like when you look at a Pereira, they are very different. I would agree. But is Ben Rama sort of absolute levels above Pereira, and would that justify that sort of price tag and a top four? I don't know if he is. I don't know if he is too. I think Pereira is just so good, and maybe equally as good. But yeah, I mean, we'll move on. But mine would be Pereira as well. I think your main man. I still think he's your main man, even though you've got some brilliant players. Just absolutely a sitting duck for the Premier League. There are so many players in both teams here that are just ready for the Premier League on so many levels for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as well with Ben Rama, what we've seen the last few games is he's become so much more of a rounded player post-lockdown. His defensive work rate is absolutely worlds away from what it was at the start of the season. I think that was, Rico Henry said it in the interview after the Wigan game, that Ben Rama, he didn't just score a hat-trick. He was tracking back. He was winning the ball back on the edge of his box. That's something we've never seen from him before. And he can do it, and he's got that hustle, and he's got that energy. And I think if that side of his game continues to develop, he then becomes a much more rounded player, and he is perhaps of that Premier League level, for those top teams. But yeah, I think he's a shoo-in for the team this season, I think.
So we've got Ben Rama on one side, we've got Pereira. Have we gone through your number 10 yet?
Well, Pereira, I was going to put Pereira through the middle. I'm going for a little bit of a different one on the right, but I've mentioned him already. Garner, I think, is fantastic, and that he's in my team. And I know I've not put Pinnock in because of he's maybe not been fantastic all season. Garner's had injury issues, hasn't played every game, and perhaps maybe 6 goals, 6 assists. It's good, but it's not stats wise that high. But I've gone for him because when I watch him, I'm terrified as a Brentford fan. When I saw him, he had a few glimmers in that game where he sat Dalsgaard on his arse like straight away in the first couple of minutes. And I thought, this boy has got real potential again. And he's one of those players, you give the ball to him and he can dribble and he can, one-on-one going forwards. He is frightening.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is what we're talking about, isn't it? That individual quality that, have the ability to just change games on a knife edge. And I think Ben Rama, I think Diangana, Pereira, Pablo Hernandez, players of that ilk, they can just switch a game like that. And I think, yeah, what a wonderful player he is. What an absolutely wonderful player. So I guess, obviously, Paul, you've got sort of one to go. So I'll give you my two. So I've gone two up front. My first one has got to be the man who Leeds fans don't like to talk about anymore, but it's got to be Mitrovic. Sort of alongside Ben Rama, I think he's been the standout this season. I mean, it's hard to see how anyone could sort of leave him out, really, isn't it? 31 goals in 39 games. Fulham picking him up for about 18, I think it was 18 to 22 million in 2018. But I don't know about you, Paul, but surely it's that money's been well worth it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I'm going to actually disagree with you here. I can't put him in my team. And that's not a thing. That's not an anti-Fulham thing. For me, he scored the same amount of goals as Watkins. Watkins makes it into my team. Watkins is my player of the season. And to see how I'm going to talk about Watkins here because I can. To see how he has changed and adapted his game over the summer. He's a straight out number 9 now, but he can play out wide. He hustles, he harries. His off the ball movement is fantastic, and he is the integral feature that allows our team to get these, to find these pockets of space. It's the way that he pulls off. Yes, he scored 23 goals this season, and that's very clinical finishing. But it's what he doesn't do that I feel like Mitrovic hasn't done. Mitrovic, yes, he's a predator in the box. He's physical. He's muscles his way around. He's a bully, and he's a real clinical finisher as well. But I feel like Watkins makes Brentford tick in a way that Fulham need Mitrovic to be the one who's putting the ball in the back.
They rely on him, don't they, heavily?
Yeah,
I think I completely agree. Someone's just said then, what about Bam Bam? I can't even answer that question. Sorry, mate. And I'm going to shock you here, Paul. I don't know if you know this, but The Athletic were reporting yesterday that Ollie Watkins has an £18 million buyout clause, which is I mean, it's absolutely, when you look at what sort of Maupay went for and sort of what season Watkins had this year. I mean, you look at even when Sheffield United went up, not getting someone like a Watkins. I know he's come into his own this year, and people weren't to know that last year. But just the potential of that kid, I still think he's a diving cheat. But I think he's also he's a gifted player, and to make that transition into the striker, not many players can do that, can they?
Right, not at all. It's. I think it came as a shock. I think when we knew last season that it was going to be maybe Maupay and Ben Rama, perhaps both were going to go, perhaps just one. And it was Maupay who went, but we had about a week to go and we didn't, it was like, we're not replacing him. We thought, oh my God, because we needed Maupay last season because he was the one who scored such a huge percentage of our goals in a way that Mitrovic is at Fulham. He was massive for us in that regard. But Watkins has just slotted right in and has scored, I think he's almost on the same trajectory as Maupay was. It's ridiculous, and I mean he's been fantastic this season. I think the fact that he's a young, I think he's 23, maybe 24, but a young English striker. Yes, he won't get an England call up until he's playing in the Prem, but he will be playing in the Prem next season. The fact that it's an 18 million release clause is that I was very shocked by that, to be honest. I think there have been examples of us letting players go for not enough, but ultimately, if Ollie wants to leave, Ollie will leave. That's the way our club works. I just hope that clubs sort of pay a bit more than 18 million. Really, I think he's worth 30 at least.
Sorry for you.
Yeah,
but I think I agree, Matt. I think it's going to be one of those where it's going to be an not a fire sale for Brentford if they don't go up, but we were just talking about Leeds earlier, the likes of Calvin Phillips going, Ben White, going back to his parent club. Definitely he won't be in the Championship next year if we don't go up. But you look at West Brom, and maybe West Brom are going to lose likes of Callum Robinson. Is Charlie Austin going to be there next year? Really, Diangana's going to go back from his loan. But you look at Brentford and the clubs in the Premier League, bottom half clubs, would be absolutely crazy. And if we went up and Brentford didn't, I've already come out and said he would be the #1 target for me, Ollie Watkins. And players like, you look at Mbuemo, and I know you bought him for cheap, but Ben Rama as well. I mean, once again, if this does happen, worst case scenario for Brentford, the recruitment's going to be more important than ever for next season, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, we are traditionally a selling club, and I think we've sort of pootled along in the Championship kind of, top half, but we've still had huge interest in our players. Now that we are right in the forefront, we basically didn't sell anyone in January because we were on a promotion charge. Normally those kind of players we'd have been accepting offers for. The offers were coming in and we would have been accepting them, but we didn't because we knew this is the one shot we've got. Not I wouldn't say the one shot, but this is a real shot we've got to get promotion. I think yes, there are within the club, we have got squad depth now, and we have got players who could come in and do a job, but it will take a while to build up again. It's that classic Brentford thing. The season, if we don't go up, our top players will probably go. I think Ben Rama and Watkins, if we don't go up, are gone, and that's a sad reality of it. I think we do well. I think we could hang on to a lot of the other players just because of the money that we'll get in for those two if we don't go up. But if we do go up, it'd be really interesting to see what happens to the team, because I think, with a bit of Premier League money behind us, potentially we will actually sell someone like Ben Rama and be able to reinvest that so much in the squad and have real Premier League quality players all around the park.
Definitely. I mean, you've got a history of it, mate, especially with that sort of money. I mean, Pinnock, obviously, and Mbuemo, all of that coming from the Morpay sale, which was, and more and lots more. But mate, we have just hit the 2-hour mark. Doesn't feel like 2 hours, feels like 40 minutes, doesn't it? But thank you so much for coming on, buddy. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. And if you want to see this regularly, Paul could be available for regular appearances on the podcast. So make sure you slap a like on the video. Cheers for coming along, mate.
Right. No, it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. It's good to talk about all these things and, get it out there. It's just going to be a brilliant into the season, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. We just need Agent Bowyer to do something for us tonight. But yeah, obviously, all of you tune in for the games tonight. Massive impacts on West Brom, Brentford, Leeds, so many clubs in that picture. There's been probably about 40 of you who've stuck with us for the full 2 hours. It's gone up to 50, it's gone up to 60, it's been down to 20, but there's been a solid average of about 40. So please, if you are still around, like the video, make sure you subscribe to the In Full Swing podcast. We're going to have more Championship content as well. Not just Leeds, but Championship content. So I think there is a lot more to talk about, and we'll have more to delve into in the next coming weeks. So cheers, mate. Make sure everyone go check out Paul, available on Twitter and everything else, aren't you there, Paul, under Paul Harrison?
Yeah. On the Beesotted Brentford as well. Go and check out that website. Listen to some of the podcasts. Billy and the boys got a lot to say about our chances over the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And cheers, everyone, and we'll see you in a bit.
See ya.